Hello students, welcome to CR's digital classes. Irozu, welcome to CR's digital classes. Today we are going to see this important questions of chemistry and semester 1. So for semester 1, the important questions we are going to see unit wise, and I will explain you how to easily remember them also. So let us discuss the question paper pattern first. So we already know that the syllabus has been changed for you. Previously it is different. Now it is the new regulation which has been changed in this last year 2025. So generally the pattern will be like this. Expected from 1 to 12 questions they will belong to part A, and part B 4 to 12 marks, 48 marks you will get. All these belong to each question belongs to each unit in the syllabus. So you already know that unit 1 is inorganic chemistry, and unit 2 is organic chemistry, and unit 3 is physical chemistry, and unit 4 is general chemistry. So the syllabus has not been changed completely. The previous syllabus, 2-3 some topics from chapters from other semesters have been joined into this semester. So it's already there. So let us see how we have to understand the concepts. So coming to unit 1, important questions. Which questions will be mostly asked? Let us see. So here we have first question is preparative methods of diborane and its structure. Now this question has been repeated for 3 times. So that means it is important. So let us know the answer first. So diborane, you all know that the formula is B2H6. It is a covalently bonded compound of boron and hydrogen, and it has electron deficient nature because here there are 3 atoms, that means 3 centers, and all the 3 atoms are together joined by only 2 electrons. Hence it is called as 3 center 2 electron bonding. And because of this less number of electrons, it is called as electron deficient molecule. That means electron deficient nature. So here, now see the structure. First, the preparative methods. The question has been asked first for preparative methods. So preparative methods of diborane, there are few methods. The first method is from boron trifluoride and lithium aluminum hydride. So these two, when they are treated in the presence of dry ether. So in the presence of dry ether, we will get diborane. So 4BF3, 3LiLH4, we will get B2H6, lithium fluoride and aluminium trifluoride. All these compounds are formed. So this one is one method from boron trifluoride and lithium aluminum hydride, from these two. The next method is from sodium borohydride. From sodium borohydride and iodine. So when these two react with each other, we will get diborane along with sodium iodide and hydrogen gas is liberated. So let us see the equation for that. So sodium borohydride, iodine, we get diborane, sodium iodide and hydrogen gas. All these are formed. So these two are the important methods of diborane, preparation of diborane. So the first one is from lithium aluminum hydride and aluminium trifluoride, boron trifluoride, and the next is sodium borohydride and iodine. So these two are the methods. Then let us see the structure, how diborane exists. So here in diborane, among the 6 hydrogens that are present, 4 are terminal hydrogens. Terminal hydrogens means they are present at the ends of the molecule. And now these terminal bonds are normal covalent bonds. They are normally formed. Then the remaining 2 hydrogens, 4 are done here, 2 more hydrogens, they act as bridging hydrogens. That means they are present in between 2 boron atoms. So that is why it is 3 center 2 electron bonds with both the boron atoms. Now here, so these participate in 3 center 2 electron bonds with both boron atoms. So these bonds, these are not normal covalent bonds, these are special bonds, hence they are called as bridging bonds. So let us see. So here, because of this, there is one more feature called banana bonding. So like the orbitals formed here are like in the shape of banana. So because of this banana shaped orbitals, the electrons that are present in these orbitals, they can delocalize. They can move from one atom to another atom. So that is why it is called as banana bond. And here the hybridization is sp3 hybridization. Boron is sp3 hybridized and it effectively bonds with 4 hydrogen atoms. Only 6 electrons are available for bonding. That means 2 borons, we have 2 electrons and 6 hydrogens are present, but only 4 electrons are present from the bond, from hydrogens. So here 6 hydrogens, we will get 6 electrons, 2 borons, 2 electrons are formed. But however, when we observe, what happens here is, the tetrahedral boron atom is BHP here. The geometry is tetrahedral and BHP bond angle. Bond between bridge angle is 83 degrees, which is less than the tetrahedral angle. Though it has tetrahedral geometry approximately, due to this change in bond angle, it is not completely tetrahedral. And the bond length of bridging hydrogen is greater. So here if you see, you can see the structure. So these 4 are 1, 2, 3, 4 terminal hydrogens. These are bridging hydrogens. So here 1, 1, 1, 1. 4 electrons are done. And here each boron has 1 electron. Actually, here 1 electron, hydrogen in this structure, in between this part of the molecule, boron has 1 electron and hydrogen has 1 electron. But this hydrogen is again being shared with another boron atom. There is no one more atom here. That is why bridging has to be done and the electrons have to be delocalized to satisfy the valency. This is called as banana bond or bridging hydrogens that are present here. So this is the structure of diborane. If you remember this structure, you can easily write whatever we have discussed previously so that it will be easy for you. So try to practice this structure as more frequently so that you will remember the answer completely. Then next, chemical properties. What are the chemical properties? We'll see. First reaction is hydrolysis reaction. When diborane reacts with water, what happens is boric acid is formed. 2BOH3. Remember these equations. If you remember these equations, you can turn this into sentences and complete your answer. Then combustion reaction. Here boron, when treated with air or burnt in air or treated with oxygen, it forms boron trioxide. B2O3 is formed. Then this is the equation here. B2H6 plus 3O2 gives B2O3 plus 3H2. Then halogenation reaction. When diboron reacts with halogens like chlorine or bromine, it forms boron halides. So boron halides can be, they vary depending upon the presence, depending upon the amount that is taken, depending upon the amount of halogen. Suppose if only one molecule is taken, we get B2H5Cl. Then B2H6, 3 times more, 3 molecules will get BCl3. 6 molecules will get 2 molecules of BCl. So depending upon the amount of halide taken, the compound will be different, but all are halides altogether. Same compound is formed. So to remember the whole answer, I have got a simple trick for you. Here we have, for the preparation, remember BNA, that is boron trifluoride and lithium aluminium hydride is the first method. Then sodium iodine and sodium borohydride is the second method, that is for preparation. And structure, 4 terminal hydrogens are present, 2 bridged hydrogens are present, banana bond is present. So 4 terminal hydrogens, 2 bridge hydrogens, banana bond, which is 3-centered 2 electron. If you remember these words, you can explain them, you can elaborate them into the whole answer easily. Then chemical properties, hot for hydrolysis. Hydrolysis, when diboron reacts with water, it gives acid. When it is combustion, when it occurs, it is burnt in oxygen, we will get oxide. Halogenation, this one is halide. Now when reacts, this is for hot, hydrolysis for hot, cool for combustion, halo for halogenation. Easy, right? So if you remember, if you see at this answer, this particular box, you can explain it easily. Coming to the next question. We have preparative methods of borazole. One more important compound of boron, which is here 2 methods of preparation of borazole and structure. Borazole also has another names like borazine and inorganic benzene. So question paper may trick you so that you will get confused. So borazole, borazine, inorganic benzene, all are same, one compound itself. Now let us see what is it. So borazole, also known as borazine, which is B3N3H6. B3N3H6 is a 6-membered heterocyclic compound. Why is it called as heterocyclic? Because all atoms are not same. Here we have borons, nitrogens in the cycle, and they are bonded with hydrogen. So all atoms are not same, hence it is heterocyclic compound. So now these are all arranged in a hexagonal planar ring. That means like they exist like a hexagon. And this structure resembles benzene, hence it is called as inorganic benzene. And there is also partial delocalization. In benzene we have complete delocalization of electrons. That is why we draw this circle in between. Right? So similarly, here even in B3N3H6 we have, even in borazole we have partial delocalization. Hence it is called as inorganic benzene. So let us see what are other features that are present. And you all know that benzene is not polar, it is a non-polar compound. But whereas borazine, that is inorganic benzene, borazole is polar compound, hence it is highly reactive. Right? So these are the special features of borazole. Now let us come to the preparative methods. There are many methods, but 2 of them are widely used. Most used laboratory methods we are going to discuss. First one is diborane and ammonia. So diborane and ammonia reacted at 473 Kelvin. At this high temperature, we'll get borazine ring. So remember this equation. B2H6, 3B2H6 plus 6NH3. On heating, we get borazine plus hydrogen gas. This is one method from diborane and ammonia. The next method from lithium borohydride and ammonium chloride. So lithium borohydride and ammonium chloride NH4Cl when heated at 230 degrees Celsius in vacuum. Here vacuum is also added. So vacuum, 230 degrees Celsius, reaction between lithium borohydride and ammonium chloride, we get borazole. Now this is the equation, LiBH4. So LiBH4 plus 3NH4Cl will get B3N3H6 and other compounds. Right? So this is how we form or we make borazole. Right? Now let us see the structure of borazole. So the first point you have to remember is it is a 6-membered alternating ring. That means boron bonded with nitrogen, boron, here again nitrogen we have boron. So this is alternating ring and it is hexagon, right? And all these are attached with hydrogens. Single hydrogens we have here. So this is the structure of borazine. The first point is 6-membered ring. And the ring is planar. It belongs to one plane only. There are no different planes. That means one boron is in this plane, another boron is like this. It is not like that. In all atoms are present in one single plane. And the bond lengths are also equal. So because of this equal bond angles, resonance may occur. That is delocalization of electrons occur. So here, but it is not uniform. Though delocalization is present, it is not uniform. That means all atoms are not covered with the electron cloud. Hence, the electronegativity. This is because due to the electronegativity difference between boron and nitrogen. In benzene, there are all carbons. There is no electronegativity at all because all get cancelled. But here, boron and nitrogen they have different electronegative values. There is a difference in electronegativity. Hence, pi electron delocalization is not uniform. So that means electrons will be more close to the nitrogen atoms because nitrogen is more electronegative when compared to boron. So the next point we have to see is each BN bond, each boron nitrogen bond has partial double bond character, not complete double bond, but partial double bond character. Hence it has resonance structures. As you can see here, there are so this is the structure of diborane. Here one boron, nitrogen, boron, nitrogen, boron, nitrogen. All have hydrogens and there are double bonds also. So if you want to draw it, so let us draw nitrogen, again nitrogen here, and one more boron in between. Each atom has one hydrogen attached. And there are double bonds present. alternating double bonds. So here we will have plus charge like that. So because of the electronegativity difference. Now this is the structure of borazine. So if you need not present this plus charge and minus charge, it's okay. So even if you write this structure, that is enough, right? And these are the structures. As the bonds are delocalized, we will get resonance structures also that we know, and you can see these structures. So here we have, here only single bonds are present, no double bonds. Here double bonds and the charges are present on each nitrogen. And by shifting these bonds from here to here, again we will get one more canonical structure. This is about borazole structure and its preparation. So to remember again the whole thing, we have preparative methods, Da and La, DALA, that means diborane and ammonia. D for diborane, A for ammonia, and L is for lithium borohydride, A for ammonium chloride. So these two are the preparative methods, and here we have structure. It is BAN P. So BAN is boron, B for boron, and nitrogen alternate nitrogen, then all A for all BN bonds are equal, and R for resonance, partial double bond character, and N for non-equal resonance, hence partial double bond, and non-uniform delocalization also, and P for planar ring. So this is how you can remember the whole answer easily, right? So this is about the structure preparation of borazole. So the next important question here we have interhalogen compounds, their classification, preparation and structures. So interhalogen compounds means compounds, binary molecules that are formed between two or more halogens. Those are called as interhalogen compounds. So due to the binary molecules, that means two types of molecules are present. Binary does not include that, only two molecules are present. More than two atoms can be present, but all those are of two types only. So let us see, these compounds, interhalogen compounds, are formed due to the electronegativity difference between halogens also. You all know that halogens also have electronegativity difference. So fluorine being the highest electronegative atom, then comes oxygen of course, but in case of halogens, next we have chlorine, then iodine, then bromine, then next comes iodine. The electronegativity decreases, right? So this is how, due to this difference between electronegativity, these compounds, interhalogen compounds, can be formed. So among the two atoms that are present in the molecule, we'll have one molecule will act as a center and the other molecule will be surrounding. Other atoms will be surrounding the central atom. So due to these difference in electronegativity, they exhibit different structures and also different reactivities. Now let us see how are they classified. So interhalogen compounds, they are classified based on their stoichiometry. That means how much is the amount of the substance, or how many atoms are present, how many molecules are present. Based on that, these interhalogen compounds are classified. These are of four types. The first one is AB. A being the central halogen, B is the surrounding halogen. Then AB3, AB5 and AB7. So these are the four types of interhalogens. So let us see the first interhalogen AB. So one atom each. So one central atom, central halogen. The second one is the surrounding halogen. Only two atoms are present, like CLF, BRF, ICL. These are AB type interhalogens, and these are simplest interhalogens. Then next comes AB3 type. So here A is a central atom, larger atom, and B3, three atoms of smaller halogen are present. So these are surrounded by the central atom, larger interhalogen, the A molecule, the central halogen, larger halogen is surrounded by three smaller halogens like ClF3 and BrF3, boron trifluoride, chlorine trifluoride, bromine trifluoride and chlorine trifluoride. So these have T-shaped geometry. That means the two atoms, the central atom is present here, one atom is here, one atom is here, and the third atom is here, like this, T-shaped molecule. So then AB5 type. So these compounds, they have one central halogen and 5 surrounding halogens. They may be terminal. So here we have the examples of chlorine pentafluoride, bromine pentafluoride, and iodine pentafluoride. So they have square pyramidal geometry. That means a square is present in one plane and one more halogen. 4 halogens surrounding here. Central larger halogen is present. For example, if we take IF5, iodine is present in the middle. One halogen is present here, F, fluorine, and 4 corners of square, 4 halogens are present. So this is square pyramidal geometry. Then we have AB7 type. Here 7 small halogens are surrounding the central larger halogen. Here we have the example of IF7. And they have pentagonal bipyramidal structure. So that means a pentagon is present in between, one halogen above, one fluorine above, one fluorine below. 5 fluorines surrounding each corner of the pentagon. So that is how this molecule is present. Now each type reflects increasing number of fluorine atoms attached to the central atom. So there are increased number of surrounding halogens in the interhalogens. Now let us see the preparation. Most common method is direct combination. Directly 2 atoms, they react each other. If we go on changing the amount of or the proportion ratio of the atoms, then automatically corresponding interhalogen is formed. For example, 1:1 ratio if we take, then we get AB type compounds, AB type interhalogens. So let us see the equations for that. So Cl2F2, equal proportion, one molecule will get chlorine, fluoride. The next, if one halogen is excess, then we get AB3, AB5 or AB7. If they go on increasing, then we will get the remaining halogens. Let us see those equations also. Here we have 1 chlorine molecule and 3 fluorine molecules. We get chlorine trifluoride. Here 5 molecules, bromine pentafluoride. 7 molecules, we get iodine heptafluoride. That is how we can form these interhalogens by direct combination, simply by changing the ratio of the compounds. So even though these reactions are simple, they need some specific conditions. So those specific conditions have to be maintained. Now that is not that much required. Simply if you remember these equations, it is easy. Next, coming to the structure. Each structure, their hybridizations that we are going to see. The structure of interhalogen compounds. These are described by Vesper theory. So let us take the second unit important questions now. So the ozonolysis of alkenes. In second unit organic chemistry, we have all named reactions and also mechanisms. So it's easy to, I know that it's a bit hard, but it is, I have also come with easy tips to remember those mechanisms for you. So let us see. The first question is ozonolysis. So ozonolysis is, from the name itself we can understand that in the presence of ozone, lysis, that means the bond is broken. So using ozone, the bond is broken between carbon atoms, or the carbon chain is broken. So this reaction, what occurs is, we'll see. So here the ozonolysis of alkenes. Alkenes, you know that double bonded carbon chain. So, so here ozone will break the carbon-carbon double bond. So the double bond is broken here. So to form, which compound is formed here is, the first intermediate formed here is ozonide. Ozonide is the intermediate that is formed, and it occurs in the presence of zinc in water as a reducing agent. So here, now let us see what happens in the reaction. So here ozonolysis can be occurred in, for alkenes, ozonolysis can be occurred in by using two types of reagents. First one is zinc and water, then the second one is with peroxide, like hydrogen oxidizing agent, like hydrogen peroxide. So hydrogen peroxide, in presence of hydrogen, so based on the reagent, the products are also changed. So let us see here, if we use zinc and water as a reducing agent, so we'll get aldehydes or ketones, carbonyl compounds are formed. If peroxide is used, we'll get carboxylic acids. So here we have two types of reagents. In the presence of reducing reagent, we get carbonyl compounds. In the presence of oxidizing agents, we get acids from alkenes by the process of ozonolysis. So this is about ozonolysis. Now let us understand the mechanism, what happens here. So in the first step, so here we get first the ozone, O3 molecule will get attached to the double bond, forming molozonide intermediate. So then after the formation of molozonide, it rearranges itself to become stable ozonide. Molozonide is first formed, then we get ozonide on rearrangement, and the third step is reduction or oxidation based on the reagent that is used. We will get the final products from the ozonide. So as we have discussed, if reducing agent is taken, we will get carbonyl compounds. If oxidizing agent is taken, then we get carboxylic acids. So this final step will form the products. Now let us see the equation. So the equation here, we have alkene, when ozone is added, we get molozonide, which is unstable. On rearrangement, we get this molozonide will be converted into ozonide. And in presence of zinc oxide or DMSO, that means dimethyl sulfoxide, we'll get a ketone. Two ketones we have got here. For example, ethene, if we take, we get two molecules of formaldehyde. Now this is the mechanism. Now to remember this, I have got a one-line mechanism so that you can remember the whole 3 steps in just one line. So here, first is the ozone added to double bond, we get mole ozonide that changes into ozonide, second step, and breaks to give either carbonyl products or carboxylic acids based on the reagent used. Here we have used zinc and zinc oxide, so hence we get carbonyl products only, right? So easy to remember. First step is ozone attaches to double bond, we get mole ozonide. Second step, rearrangement of mole ozonide to ozonide. Then third step, breaking of ozonide to give carbonyl products. Done. Let us see the next question. Anti-Markovnikov's rule. So anti-Markovnikov's rule can also be asked as reaction of alkene with hydrogen bromide in the presence of peroxide. It can be asked like this or like this. Sometimes it is also asked as peroxide effect also or Kharasch effect also. So these are the common names that are given to anti-Markovnikov's rule. So this question is repeated 2 times in previous exams. So let us see what happens in the reaction. So when HBr, hydrogen bromide, is added to propene or any alkene in the presence of organic peroxides, not hydrogen peroxide here, organic peroxide, we get, the reaction will follow anti-Markovnikov's rule. Markovnikov's rule, if you understand, then we'll get back to that question also, Markovnikov's rule. Now let us see what happens here. So here what happens is bromine, in the reagent that we have added, hydrogen bromide, bromine will add to the carbon with more hydrogens. So this mechanism, this is called as anti-Markovnikov's rule or peroxide effect. So this mechanism occurs through a free radical path. So that means free radicals are formed in this reaction. So let us see. The first one, peroxide. First step, peroxide will undergo homolytic cleavage to give alkoxy radicals. Alkoxy radicals are these ones, RO dot, single dot. So this alkoxy radicals will react with HBr to form bromine free radicals. We'll get bromine free radicals. See here, ROR gives 2 alkoxy radicals. Here this is organic peroxide or alkyl peroxide. Here we get alkoxy free radicals, and this alkoxy free radical reacting with hydrogen bromide, we get ROH and bromine free radicals. That is the first step. Then in the second step, we have this bromine free radical that is formed. This attacks propene and adds to the less substituted carbon, forming a secondary carbon radical. So here bromine radical will attack the less substituted carbon. Less substituted carbon generally comes as terminal carbon, because terminal carbon has only hydrogens. There are no any other groups. So there are no other substituents except hydrogen. So bromine free radical will attack the terminal carbon, then forming a secondary carbon free radical. Secondary carbon free radical is formed. That is the second step. Then the third step, the equation here you can see this one, propene, the terminal carbon with less substituents. Here we have this one. Among these two, this one is terminal, this one is also terminal. But here there are less number of substituents, right? So this less number of substituents, this carbon is attacked by the bromine free radical to form bromide and a secondary free radical, right? So this carbon then abstracts hydrogen atom from another HBr molecule. So from another HBr molecule, this free radical will attract the hydrogen atom and HBr molecule and the regeneration of bromine free radical occurs. So here we get, so this one reacts with HBr again, we'll get propyl bromide and bromine free radical. So the reaction again continues, and so the major product formed here is 1-bromopropane due to the anti-Markovnikov orientation facilitated by the free radical mechanism, right? So this is Kharash effect or anti-Markovnikov rule. So one line mechanism is peroxide forms alkoxy radicals and bromine radicals. Bromine radicals add to the alkane, and after forming, they form carbon free secondary free radicals. Then they attract hydrogen. Then they give anti-Markovnikov product, that is 1-bromopropane. Right? Have you all understood? This is the easiest way to remember the reaction. First step is formation of peroxide radicals and bromine radicals. The second step, addition of bromine radical to the alkene, forming secondary carbon free free radical of carbon atom. Then we'll get attraction of or extraction of hydrogen from HBr to give the final product 1-bromopropane. Right? The next question. So now we have come back to Markovnikov's rule. Previously we have seen anti-Markovnikov's rule. Now this is Markovnikov's rule. Now that this rule is completely opposite to anti-Markovnikov. What happens here is, so Markovnikov's rule, what does it tell? That is unsymmetrical reagent. Rule states that when an unsymmetrical reagent like hydrogen halide is unsymmetrical because the electrons are not distributed equally between the two atoms present. So the bond pair is attracted more towards the halogen, not towards the hydrogen. Right? So that is why it is called unsymmetrical. When an unsymmetrical reagent is added to unsymmetrical alkene, the hydrogen atom attaches to the carbon atom which already has more hydrogen atoms. That means here in Markovnikov's rule, the halogen atom, the bromide ion or chloride ion will attack the carbon with more number of hydrogen atoms. So this is opposite to anti-Markovnikov. Anti-Markovnikov, less number of substituents carbon will be attacked, but here it is more number of hydrogens. Now let us see. So the halogen atom adds to the carbon with fewer atoms. Hydrogen is attached to the carbon with more number of hydrogens, and bromine will be attached to the carbon with less number of hydrogens. So this rule is based on the formation of most stable carbocation. Here the intermediate formed is carbocation. In anti-Markovnikov's rule, it is free radical. Here it is carbocation. Now let us see. So the step 1, formation of carbocation. First step is formation of carbocation. So the pi electrons of double bond is broken, and this is attached to due to the attack of hydrogen halide. So a carbocation is formed. Then the proton adds. The proton formed here will add to the carbon having more number of hydrogen atoms. So this is the most important thing in this rule. Proton will add to the carbon with more number of hydrogen atoms. That means less substituted carbon. So here, see the equation. Propene, the proton is attacked with the among these three, this middle carbon is least substituted. So less number of hydrogens. Here we have CH plus. Right? Now, the secondary carbocation, now this is stable. When compared to primary carbocation, secondary carbocation is more stable. Now, next what happens is the nucleophilic attack. So, the halide ion here, the attack of halide ion occurs, we'll get attacks the carbocation leading to the formation of the final product. So, the carbocation will directly attach to this second carbon. So, from here to here, right? So, we'll get a secondary substituted alkyl halide. So, that means 2-chloropropane or 2-bromopropane, anyone. So, here in anti-Markovnikov's rule, we have seen the halide ion attacking the present on the first carbon in the final product. But here it is in the middle carbon. So hence that is the difference between anti-Markovnikov and Markovnikov's rule. So here, now Markovnikov's rule is applicable to electrophilic addition reactions involving alkanes and reagents like HX. HX means hydrogen halides, water, or HOX, HOCl, like acids of chloride, hydrogen hypochlorous acid, hypochloric acid, like those acids. All these reagents will follow Markovnikov's rule when they react with alkenes. That is the common thing to remember. Then let us see the mechanism in one line. First, what happens is hydrogen adds first to form more stable carbocation. Then halide attacks to give the Markovnikov's product. So first hydrogen will attach on less substituted carbon with less number of hydrogens, and the halide ion will attack the carbon with proton, with the positive charge. Generally it is secondary carbocation. This is the Markovnikov's product. Next is the Saint-Zeff's rule. This question is also repeated 2 times. So here, let us see the rule first. During an elimination reaction, now previously we have dealt with addition reaction. Now this is elimination reaction. So here, alkene which has a greater number of alkyl groups attached to the double bonded carbon. So the major product formed. Here, this rule will discuss about the major and minor products formed. Which product will form in higher amounts when compared to other product. Now let us see what happens here. The major product formed in the elimination of alkene contains more number of alkyl groups attached to the doubly bonded carbon atoms. Now we'll see what it is. So here, according to this rule, elimination reactions, the hydrogen atom is preferentially removed from the beta carbon. Beta carbon means, suppose if a carbon has a functional group OH, right, an alcohol, this is alpha carbon. And if another carbon is attached here, this carbon is called as beta. This is beta, this is alpha. So this beta carbon, so removed from beta carbon contains fewer hydrogen atoms. Here this carbon will have less number of hydrogen atoms. So hence in elimination reaction the hydrogen atoms are removed from the beta carbon present in that molecule. So let us see. So because of that what happens? More substituted alkene is formed. So which is stable that is stable again due to hyperconjugation and plus effect, positive inductive effect of alkyl groups. So that is formed as a major product. Let us see how it occurs. For example, we have here 2-chloropentane when treated with alcoholic potassium hydroxide. It undergoes dehydrohalogenation to give 1-pentene, that is less substituted, and 2-pentene which is more substituted. So what happens here, we'll see. Here this is, so this is the reaction we have here. This is 2-chloropentane. 2-chloropentane. Now this carbon, I don't know, I'll write here. So this is 2-chloropentane. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2-chloropentane. So here this carbon is alpha and this is beta. Here this is also beta actually. But according to the rule, the beta carbon with less number of hydrogens is attacked. So hence, that means it is eliminated. The hydrogens from here are eliminated to form a double bond. That is why we get 2 pentene when compared to 1 pentene. So if one hydrogen from this compound is eliminated along with this molecule, this double bond will attack here. So we'll get 2 pentane. So 2-pentene is formed. This is Sage-Jeff's rule, right? I hope you have understood. Let us see one-line mechanism. How, not mechanism, but simply the compound, how we can remember this. So here, hydrogen acts first to form the more stable carbocation, then the halide attacks to give the Markovnikov product. This also occurs as a Markovnikov product. But here what happens? The next question in organic chemistry is about Sage-Jeff's rule. So in the Sage-Jeff's rule, this question has been asked for 4 marks twice, or maybe more also. And this question is important because it tells about how elimination occurs in alkenes. Let us see what happens in this reaction. So in elimination reaction, the major product formed is the alkane which has a greater number of alkyl groups attached to the doubly bonded carbon atoms. So that means when the elimination occurs, that means removal of hydrogen. So after the removal of hydrogen, the alkene formed will have more number of alkyl groups on the doubly bonded carbon atom. So let us see the equation so that you can be able to understand it easily. So now this rule, for which molecules is it applicable? In which molecules we can see this type of rule? So here, beta elimination reactions. That means the functional group carbon is called as, the carbon with which the functional group is attached is called as alpha carbon, and the carbon beside that alpha carbon is called as beta carbon. So when beta elimination occurs, that means elimination product is, or an atom is removed from the beta carbon, then it is called as beta elimination reaction. So beta elimination reactions, especially dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halides and dehydration of alcohols. So that means Sage-Jeff's rule is applicable in beta elimination of dehydrogenation of dehydrohalogenation of alkyl halides and dehydration of alcohols. Dehydrohalogenation is removal of one hydrogen atom and also a halogen atom. And dehydration of alcohols is removal of water from alcohols. Now these type of reactions follow Sage-Jeff's rule. Let us see what happens. So according to this rule, the hydrogen atom is preferentially removed from the beta carbon, which has fewer hydrogen atoms. That means less number of hydrogen atoms. Beta carbon with less number of hydrogen atoms is preferentially, that means it is useful for the removal of hydrogen atom from that beta carbon with less number of hydrogen atoms. Now so because of that, an alkene is formed due to the stability effect, like positive inductive effect and also hyperconjugation. So formation of the alkene by removing hydrogen from beta carbon causes the production of alkene with more substituted groups, which is more substituted, and it is stable by hyperconjugation effect and positive inductive effect. So this stability will increase the amount of product, hence it is formed as major product. So let us see the equation. Here example they are given is 2-chloropentane is treated with alcoholic KOH. It undergoes dehydrohalogenation. So what does it give? Two types of products it gives. One is 1-pentene and the second one is 2-pentene. 1-pentene is less substituted, hence minor, and 2-pentene is more substituted, hence major product, according to Saytzeff's rule. Now, if you see this rule, I'll show you how to, because it is not visible here, I'm writing the equation, how it occurs, how the elimination occurs. So here we have 2-chloropentane. One more is CH. Right. Here we have chlorine and this is CH. This is 2-chloropentane. So after addition of alcoholic KOH, so here this is the alpha carbon and this is the beta carbon, right? So here what happens is, due to the removal of hydrogen from this carbon, beta carbon, here this is also beta, but it has 3 hydrogens. More in the rule they have suggested that it is the elimination occurs from the beta carbon which is having less number of hydrogens. So when compared to this beta carbon is having less number. So only 2 hydrogens here. So 1 hydrogen from here and this chlorine atom will be removed or eliminated, forming a double bond here. So the product will be 2-chloropentane, which is written like this: CH3, CH2, CH, double bond CH, CH3. So this is 2-chloropentane. Even though this elimination occurs, a small amount of 1-chloropentane is also formed here with the elimination of this hydrogen, 1 hydrogen from here and this chlorine atom. 1-chloropentane is also formed, but that is a minor product. This is about Saytzeff's rule. So you have to remember that hydrogen adds first to the more stable carbocation. So here, to remember this, you can see that you can remember it as beta carbon with less hydrogens. Undergoes elimination. So removal of 1 proton from here and the adjacent molecule will be eliminated with the halogen atom. That is how 2-chloropentane is formed. Right? So the next, the acidic nature of acetylene. So this question can be asked in different forms. The framing may be different, but the answer is same. explain the acidic nature of acetylene, or explain the acidity of acetylenic hydrogen, or sometimes describe the acidity of one alkynes. So it can be asked in any way, and this question is also repeated in 4 marks answers. Now let us see. You all know that acetylene is C2H2. So this C2H2 is classified or named as terminal alkyne because the triple bond is not present in between, it is to the end. For example, here in acetylene there are only 2 carbons, right? So there is not much issue. But in some alkynes, what happens here is, for example, if we take this one. So this one, 2-butene. Here the triple bond is present in between. So hence it is not terminal. If the triple bond is present on this here in this position or in this position, then it is called as terminal alkyne. So here we have taken the example of acetylene, so it is terminal. So you need not bother. If you take the example of molecules like butene or butane or pentine, then we have to take the examples of placing the triple bond to this end or this end, left side or right side, right? So here, due to the presence of this triple bond, the protons attached to that carbon are acidic in nature, weakly acidic in nature. Why is in acetylene or in any alkyne, the carbon which is triple bonded is sp hybridized. It is sp hybridized. Due to sp hybridization, the s orbital has 50% s character. So because of that 50% s character, the electronegativity of particular carbon with sp hybridization will increase. This causes the movement of electrons from hydrogen atom. For example, I can show you it here clearly. So this, due to the electronegativity, higher electronegativity of this carbon, the bond pair will be closer to the carbon atom than hydrogen, right? So because of this proton will become more acidic. The hydrogen will become more acidic and it can be removed as a proton. Now this nature is called acidity of alkynes, especially terminal alkynes. So this is measurable. We can also measure it, and because of this property, some special reactions occur, which is like reaction with sodium metal. Acetylene or terminal alkynes, they react with sodium metal to form acetylide and deliberate hydrogen gas. So this is about the acidic nature of alkynes, terminal alkynes. Now see the equation here. Acetylene, sodium, acetylide, sodium acetylide, and hydrogen is liberated. So this reaction conforms as acetylene acts as an acid. So if you remember this reaction itself, you can write the whole answer. Remember that the triple bond present between the carbons makes the carbons more electronegative, and because of that more electronegativity, the hydrogen attached to those carbons will be weakly acidic and can be eliminated easily as proton. This is the acidic nature of acetylene or any terminal alkyne. So let us see the abbreviation to remember this answer. It is SpEnH+. SpEnH+. Sp is hydrogen attached to sp hybridized carbon is acidic, and En represents the electronegativity, high electronegativity of sp carbon, and H+ removes the proton. That means the hydrogen is easily removed as proton. So if you remember this answer, this abbreviation you can elaborate it into the answer and write the answer properly. Right? The next question. Aromaticity of, what is aromaticity and Huckel rule? So this question, aromaticity is a special type of stability which is specially observed in cyclic organic compounds, and it is due to the delocalization or easy moving of pi electrons. Delocalization of pi electrons. Now this delocalization occurs specially in conjugated planar ring system. So conjugated means alternating double bonds. That means here one single bond, one carbon, double bond, another carbon, single bond, again double bond. So there is a space alternating, one space is present, right? So such compounds are called as conjugated and planar rings. That means the whole ring is present in one single plane, not double planes. That means if one ring is like this and another ring is like this, then that is not planar, non-planar. So hence this aromaticity is present in conjugated planar ring systems only. And because of this delocalization, the energy state is low and this becomes more stable. This causes the compounds to be more stable due to lesser energy of the compound. Hence these compounds are called as aromatic compounds. And these aromatic compounds generally undergo substitution reactions. Right? So, though double bonds are present, generally till now alkenes, different types of alkenes, we have seen addition reactions. But due to the presence of delocalization of electrons, conjugated double bonds, these aromatic compounds, they undergo substitution reactions instead of addition reactions, so that the stabilization due to resonance can be maintained. Right? So this is about aromaticity. Then what is Huckel's rule? Huckel's rule is a compound. It defines whether a compound is aromatic or not. Now we'll see what happens. If a compound has to be aromatic, it should have 4 conditions. The Huckel's rule provides 4 conditions, and the compound to be aromatic, it has to satisfy all the 4 rules or all the 4 conditions. Let us see them. The first one is cyclic closed ring, not open ring, closed ring. The molecule should have cyclic structure and also closed rings. Next one is planar. So the ring must be planar. That means all atoms in the ring should be present in the same plane. All atoms in the ring should be present in the same plane, in single plane only. And fully conjugated. That means every atom in the ring possesses a p orbital that participates in delocalization. All the carbons present, all the atoms present in the ring, they should have p orbitals, and these p orbitals together form one more common orbital or electron cloud, so that the electrons will be delocalized, moved easily. So that means it should have fully conjugated system. The first condition is cyclic closed ring, second one is planar, and the third one is fully conjugated. Then it must contain 4n plus 2 pi electrons. The number of pi electrons should satisfy this condition, 4n plus 2. So here, what are n? What is n here? Here we have n, right? So that n is where n is non-negative integer. N stands for non-negative integer from 0, 1, 2, 3. Not negative integers, minus 1, minus 2, not like that. Only 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. Right? So this rule helps in predicting the aromatic behavior of compounds. So best example for aromatic compound, as we all know, is benzene. Right? is a classic aromatic compound. It is cyclic, planar, fully conjugated, because all 6 carbons in benzene have p orbitals and all of them are delocalized. And here the number of pi electrons is 6 pi, n is equal to 1. So it satisfies 4n plus 2 rule. So this is about aromaticity and Huckel's rule. Right? To remember the whole thing, let us see. Here it can be written as CpC 4n plus 2. C stands for cyclic, that means molecule should be a ring. P stands for planar, and C stands for conjugated, that means continuous p orbital overlap, and 4n plus 2 is common number of pi electrons, n is equal to 0, 1, 2. If all these 4 are satisfied, then the compound is called as aromatic compound, right? So this is the easy way to remember the answer, right? Coming to the next question. Ring activating and deactivating groups of aromatic compounds. This question is also repeated 2 times. So let us see. Aromatic compounds, as we have discussed earlier, they undergo substitution reactions, and that too electrophilic substitution, right? So electrophilic substitution is influenced by the nature of substituents already present on the benzene ring. Normal benzene ring without substituents will be like this, you all know, right? It will be like this. But if there are any substituents, for example, a halogen atom or a methyl group or OH or COOH or nitro group. So like this, there are many molecules. These all act as substituents because they are already present on the ring. So based on the nature of these substituents, these molecules, the electrophilic substitution reaction occurs on benzene. So what happens here is, these groups, they are classified into activating and deactivating groups. Activating and deactivating groups based on how they affect the reactivity of the ring towards substitution. So let us see what are activating groups and deactivating groups. Activating groups are those molecules which increase the reactivity of the aromatic ring. Activating is increasing the reactivity. That obviously opposite will be deactivating. That means they reduce the activity of the ring, aromatic ring. So hence here, this is due to this increase in the reactivity due to activating groups is because they donate electron density to the ring through positive resonance effect, plus R effect, or through plus I effect. Positive inductive effect or positive resonance effect. They donate the electrons to the aromatic ring and make it active so that it will participate in substitution easily. So, and these compounds, these activating groups, they make the ortho and para positions of the ring more electron rich. To know what are ortho and para positions, suppose this is present here, chlorobenzene. Now, the positions present adjacent to the chlorine, this one and this one, these are ortho. And this one are meta. And this one is para. Para position opposite to the substituent, and meta position is third place of the from the substituent already present. So here this is first, assume this as first carbon, second and third. This one is 4, 5. So third and fifth positions become meta. Fourth position becomes para. Second and sixth positions become ortho. These are the positions. Now due to reactivating groups, this ortho and para positions, 2, 6 and 4, these 3 positions are electron rich. That means while delocalization, they will become the past. These have more electrons. These three positions will have more electrons, so that the electrophile attacks those positions 2, 4 and 6. Right? So some of them are, what are they? We'll see here. OH, NH2, OCH3 and CH3. Hydroxyl group, amino group, methoxy group and methyl group. All these are ring activating groups. They produce electron rich positions and electron rich nature at ortho and para positions of the benzene ring. Right. Now let's next see what about. So one more point we can see, these groups increase electron density in the ring, facilitating faster substitution reaction. To understand this, let us see a reaction. Phenol. Phenol means this one, OH group. It can benzene with OH group, hydroxy group. So this is called as phenol. Now the phenol group donates electrons into the ring via resonance. So here what happens is, in phenol, this hydrogen, due to resonance, this hydrogen is lost, and here we'll have minus charge. So this minus charge is given into the ring. Right? So this positive charge again will delocalize. It will continuously move in the ring, making the ortho and para positions electron rich, and the substitution reactions occur easily. This is about activating groups. Then deactivating groups. That means they take away the electron density from the ring by decreasing the reactivity, thereby decreasing the reactivity. So this effect occurs due to minus induction or minus inductive effect or minus resonance effect, negative inductive effect or negative resonance effect. So let us see which type of groups will withdraw electrons, will take away electrons from the ring. So due to the drawing away of the electrons, the ring becomes less reactive, and hence this also specially occurs at the positions like ortho and para again. So due to this low electron density at ortho and para positions, the substitution becomes slower, right? So see the groups here: nitro group, carboxylic group, aldehyde, sulfonic acid and cyano group. All these will take away electrons from the ring, specially making the ortho and para positions less electron dense, and the electrophilic substitution becomes slow. Right? Now further example, nitrobenzene. Nitro group, this withdraws electrons by negative inductive and negative resonance effects, making the ring less reactive. And it directs incoming groups to the meta position. So here what happens in activating groups, due to the electron rich places of ortho and para, this is activating group, suppose activating group. So these positions are highly reactive. That means the substitution will occur in these three positions only, right? But whereas if it is a withdrawing group or deactivating group, then these positions are less reactive, but due to as these are less reactive, there is less number of electrons present in these positions. These two places are substituted. So here the products formed will be ortho or para. Here the products will be meta, right? So this is how activating and deactivating groups decide the reactivity of benzene in electrophilic substitution. Now let us see. In one line, if we want to say this answer, electron donating groups activate the ring, electron withdrawing groups, deactivate the ring. Again, so to remember, you have to write whether which groups are activating and which groups are deactivating. So for that, there is a abbreviation here. OH, NHO, CH3, CH3. All these are activated. NO, CO, CHO, SO, Cl. All these are deactivating. Instead of SO, you can also write SO3H, sulfonic acid. Right? This is about activating and deactivating groups. Let us see the next one. Long answer from this unit. Inductive effect and acidity of carboxylic acids using inductive effect. What is inductive effect and how to explain acidity of carboxylic acids. So let us see. This question is repeated twice. So here, what is inductive effect? Inductive effect occurs among sigma bonds and it is a permanent displacement of electrons from one throughout the chain, right? So here, this arises due to electronegativity difference. So see here. Electronic effect, it is transferred through sigma bonds along the carbon chain and plays a major role in chemical properties of those molecules. So it is a permanent displacement that occurs through sigma bonds due to electronegativity difference in organic compounds. That is about inductive effect. So here, let us see. There are some features. It occurs only through sigma bonds and diminishes with distance. That means it decreases with distance. If the chain is, if the molecule chain, carbon chain is long, then it diminishes, it decreases. Mostly till 4 carbons, the effect of the inductive effect is possible. After that, it will be negligible. So then inductive effect is permanent and the electrons are not delocalized. No delocalization of electrons. These are the two important features of inductive effect. Now let us see their types. Negative inductive effect is the first one. Negative inductive effect is electron withdrawing groups. They pull the electron density towards themselves. Like halogen atoms, right? Halogens, they pull the electron density. That is, these groups are called as negative or electron withdrawing groups and they cause negative inductive effect. And positive inductive effect is caused by electron donating groups. They give electrons. They don't take, but they give. So, because of that, so that is positive inductive effect. And this inductive effect can be applied to understand the acidity of carboxylic acids. Now, we all know that acidity depends upon the stability. Acidity is donating proton. Right? This nature. To donate the proton easily, the carboxylate ion formed. If, for example, this is a carboxylic acid. To give away this proton, if RCOOH, it has to give away a proton to become acidic. Then it forms proton and carboxylate ion. So this carboxylate ion must be stable. If it is stable, then the acid is strong. If it is not stable, then the acid is weak. Now let us see the effect. This is for normal without substituents. What happens if there are substituents like electron withdrawing or electron donating groups? What happens, we'll see. So effect of electron withdrawing groups or minus I groups. Substituents like chloride, nitro and cyano groups, they take away the electrons. So this reduces electron density on the carboxylate ion and stabilizes the ion. negative charge because RCOO minus. If there is a substituent like chlorine atom here, then this charge will be, the electron density will be more towards the chlorine atom, not on the carboxyl atom. Hence, this becomes stable. It is distributed. The negative charge is distributed. That's why these acids are strong, because it can easily remove the proton. So, for example, trichloroacetic acid is more acidic than normal acetic acid because it has 3 chlorine atoms which exhibit strong negative inductive effect. Because 3 halogens, they distribute the negative charge over themselves, and thus it causes the removal of protons easily and hence more acidic. Let us see the acidity order. So here, acetic acid is the least, then comes monochloroacetic acid, dichloroacetic acid and trichloroacetic acid. Right? If we compare this monochloroacetic acid with fluoroacetic acid, if instead of Cl there is fluorine, then that will be more acidic, because when compared to chlorine, fluorine is more electronegative. Hence it is more acidic. Right? Then effect of plus side groups are electron donating groups. Donating groups means like alkyl, ethyl or methoxy groups. Now these groups, they donate electrons, they give the electrons to the carboxylate ion. Because of that, there will be more electrons present around the carboxylate ion. So this destabilizes the carboxylate ion and hence the acid becomes weak. Let us see how it becomes weak. In propanoic acid. Propanoic acid is less acidic than acetic acid, because in acetic acid there is only one CH3 or one methyl group. Here there is ethyl group. So because of this ethyl group, the electrons will be given more to the carboxylate ion and hence the electron density, there will be more number of electrons. So the proton will not be removed easily. So that is why this propanoic acid is less acidic than acetic acid. Right? Then distance of substituents. Positive inductive effect, negative inductive effect, they affect in one method. But the distance, if the substituents are far away from the carboxylic acid, what happens we'll see. The closer the electron withdrawing group to the COOH group, stronger is its effect. For example, this is COOH group. And this here we have one alkyl group and there is a fluorine atom. So it is only one bond different, right? Only two bonds distance is present between the carboxylic acid group and fluorine atom. So hence it should be close. If this is close, then the electron pulling nature will be more. Suppose if R3, R2, different alkyl groups, R, COOH, and here we have fluorine. So there is distance between, now this fluorine atom, halogen atom is on one end and carboxylic acid is on another end. That is why we have lesser inductive effect. So hence the distance also matters. Substituent distance will affect the electronegativity. So for that, example is given, chloroacetic acid is given, chloropropanoic acid is given. So see here, there are two methyl groups in between, here only one methyl group. Hence, this is weaker and this is stronger acid. So to remember the answer, we can see that you all know sigma bonds, it occurs in inductive effect is due to sigma bonds, occurs on sigma bonds due to electronegativity difference, and the electrons will be shifted. This is called inductive effect. Now, acidity of carboxylic acids. Negative inductive groups increase the acidity, like electron withdrawing groups increase the acidity of acids, and electron donating groups will decrease the acidity of acids. This is about the answer. If you remember these abbreviations, you can elaborate it into the answer and get the full marks also. So that is about unit 2, right? Mostly all questions are covered. Those are the important questions and you can get good marks if you read those.